So I could tell you a little bit too about my personal experience that kind of kicked off my interest in the subject matter. So I don't, and I should lead into that too just by stating I never had like a really serious interest in Bigfoot or Sasquatch or anything like that prior to this happening. I thought it was kind of like a novel idea. There's like maybe this undiscovered thing out there in the woods or whatever. Well, it's not my problem. I'm probably never even gonna run into it. And then back in 2017, I'd gone on a fishing trip with a friend. And what had happened was we went to bed fairly early that night, and I'd been sleeping in a single man shelter too. So it's made of like looser material rather than like a tent where you're sleeping in the middle, and if something were to poke or prod at your tent, it's just really touching like the tautness or the tightness of the material, and it's not really getting through. This is like it's loose, and you could actually grab and feel things. So that's the type of tent or sleeping system I was using, and I was also probably set 7 or 8 meters away from my friend's tent as well. And at some point in the middle of the night, in the pitch black, if I were to guess, I'm guessing this would have been maybe like 3:30 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, still pitch black. Something had come into our campsite, and it was standing over my head, and it had reached through the looseness of the material and it grabbed my head with a grip. So this isn't like a poke prod of a paw. This is splayed fingers through the material, grabbed my head, woke me up. I panicked, and I kind of jostled forward a little bit, and then the hand retreated. And then it's just silence. And I don't know, maybe 5, 10, 15 seconds had gone by. This is where I get confused, because this is like after a period of time, like these periods of time in this kind of like just like freshly woken state are very difficult to judge after the event. The hand came back through the tent, or my bivvy shelter, and grabbed my head again. And then it felt around my head left and right a couple of times, like this. And so you have to also imagine, like if you've ever seen on television LeBron James grab a basketball, it looks like a normal person when they grab a grapefruit, right? The fingers go all the way around it, right? And that's what was happening to me too. So I could feel the fingers on the front of my face and fingers all the way around my head.
But there was fabric between.
But there's still like loose, like the tent material too. So something is grabbing me with a grip through my tent. What I've said this before, one of the things that it reminds me of is, it reminds me of, like if you were to put your hand into a backpack and you're like looking for like a can of soup, or you're looking for a fork or whatever when you're camping, you're going through everything and you're trying to figure out what everything is by touch. That's what this reminded me of. It wasn't violent or aggressive in a way like it was trying to hurt me. It was like, oh, what is this? This is weird. And so this is happening to me with these impossibly large hands, the biggest hands. And I can't see it, but I can feel it. And it's dark out, and now this thing has essentially collapsed my tent system on my face as it's feeling around my face. How long did that happen for? For me, it felt like a really long time, but it probably was only for 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds. And then I had gotten tired of that, so I pulled my head forward, and because I can't sit up, I can't stand, and didn't think screaming was going to help me. So I sat up kind of violently, and then the hand retreated again. And then after that, silence. So after that, I didn't hear anything move off. Nothing poked or poked or prodded my tent anymore, or my shelter, and I didn't hear anything lumber off. So I just sat there in this thing where now all the material is collapsed on my face, and I'm just sitting there, or lying there, I guess, trying to be as quiet as possible, trying to play dead. And until the sun came up, I had essentially just had to lie there and not know what I was going to do. So in this shelter too, right? I don't have any firearms, I don't have any knives, I don't even have any bear spray. I had my keys in my hand. That was it. That's all I had to defend myself. If something was trying to unbutton this and eat me like it's undressing a banana or something like that.
So when you were lying there waiting, you didn't hear it walk off. So it could have just been standing there watching you for a long time.
Yeah, leaning over top of the thing, right? And it's all that hard pack kind of Alberta, run-of-the-mill terrain where it's just, I should have heard something crunch, crunch, crunch as it moved off, or something, but nothing like that happened, which was even more unnerving. So it's just, you hear a little bit of wind, you hear a little bit of maybe a little bit of water from a nearby creek or something like that, but that was it. Zero movement. So as far as I knew, it was still there. So I wasn't going back to sleep, and I sure wasn't comfortable. It was probably one of the most miserable nights I'd ever had camping, because whatever this is still, to me, the whole time was there. So eventually, though, the sun came up, and I actually think I eventually did get out once the sun had come up, because I could see around me now, and I could see that there's nothing else silhouetted around the shelter or whatever. And after however many minutes, I was pretty certain whatever was gone anyways. And so I got up, went to the bathroom, and I actually kind of just lied back down again. And then shortly after that, my friend got up too. And still pretty early in the morning, still pretty cold out. And the first thing that he said to me was, "What were you doing walking around my tent all last night?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" So he'd taken his tent and he pushed it further back into the bush. So he had knee-high scrub and brush and debris and crap like that all around his tent. So something had been behind his tent, walking around it as well, through all of that brush and debris and stuff. I didn't ask him too much about it, but I kind of just said, "Yeah, I think something came through the campsite last night." And so this is the other part too, is well, were there other people there? No, we were camping on Crown land in the middle of nowhere on a Thursday night. So we had no neighbors or anything like that. Within kilometers, no neighbors. We had also left hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars worth of fishing gear and electronics and all nice camping stuff around our campsite tonight too. Nothing was stolen, so we don't think it was prowlers. Plus, I like to think that if somebody was prowling around the campsite and stealing our valuables, they're probably not going to be touching us through the tent or stuff like that. Also, I should mention, because someone's going to ask, well, do you think it was your friend screwing around with you? Well, for one, he would have laughed afterwards. That's a whole other thing. But the other part is that he has sleep apnea. So while this encounter was happening and then immediately following, I could hear him snoring, because he was snoring violently without his CPAP. And so that's how I know it wasn't him. Well, do you think it was a bear or something like that? I guess that's possible too. I had never seen a black bear there until several years after that. But that's possible. But whatever grabbed me, he also had hands, impossibly large hands. Go take a look into your kitchen and find the largest frying pan you have, and that's how big the hand was. Yeah, so I don't know. Whatever grabbed me had fingers.
So while it was happening, while its hand was on your face, there wasn't any point where you were like, "There's a bear here." You were probably thinking in your gut it was something else.
At the time I'm like, I'm dead, I'm dying. This is how I died. But I never saw anything. So I never went to bear or prank or prowler or anything like that. My mind was just death.
So you didn't think Bigfoot at all?
No, not at the time. And so this made life really uncomfortable for me. I didn't go camping or fishing or anything like that overnight, again, for the rest of that summer. So by the end of closer to the end of the summer though, I'd come to this conclusion, like maybe what happened is actually Bigfoot. So this is where like my, I don't know, my interest in things kind of kick off, because that for me, that wasn't an impossibility. I guess that was in the realm of unlikely things that could happen, maybe. I ended up going to a Bigfoot conference at the end of August, or even into September, I think it was. So 2017 was coincidentally the 50-year anniversary of the Patterson-Gimlin film being shot. And Bob Gimlin was in Western Montana at a conference. And but that wasn't the reason I was going down there. I went down there because I wanted to ask people some questions. And at this point, I hadn't discovered the Alberta Sasquatch website or met Rob or anyone like that. So, because now this is within my realm of possibility of things that have happened, if not a likely culprit for that. If it's real, then maybe that's what happened. Anyway, so I go down to this Bigfoot conference. And because there was a part of me that just wanted to see, like, okay, everyone that comes here is going to be just like some redneck hillbilly hick, and they're all going to have ridiculous stories, and then I will know from their ridiculousness and their lack of credibility that what happened to me couldn't have been this. So by it being not that thing, it becomes more. I was able to go back to more sensible, more reasonable, more practical, more likely explanations. And so, anyways, I went down there, and that wasn't my experience. I bet there was a lot of people there who were just regular, everyday people, and at some point in their regular, everyday activities, usually camping, hiking, hunting, whatever, they ran into them. But this is the craziest part. So I went down there, and then on the Friday night, they were running one of those town hall style encounter kind of tell us your story kind of nights. And I showed up a little bit late, actually. I missed the first hour or two. And so I go and I sneak in quietly to the back, and I sit down at the back, and someone's talking, kind of giving their story. I didn't really catch the beginning of it, and then they kind of sit down. And they're like, all right, anyone else have a story? And so they give the microphone over to this gentleman from Idaho. And he's like, yep, I've had an encounter. It scared the poop out of me. He says, I was camping with my wife in northern Idaho. And he said that because he was so tall, and the tent that they had at the time was actually big enough. So they actually slept with the door half open. So just like the flap was out, so he could sleep with his feet outside the door. So the door was already like easy to get through open and get out in the tent too. In the middle of the night, they had something crunch, 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 crunch come up to the tent and had pushed its hand through the material and grabbed his head, or touched his head, not grabbed it. And he's like, oh my goodness, something's happening. So he, unlike me, grabs a giant firearm and a flashlight, throws open the door, jumps out, spins around, turns on the flashlight, and points the gun in the direction where he got poked at. And he sees this giant Sasquatch, and it makes the classic ooh, like pursed lips, ooh sound. Turns around, runs back through the bush, and he's dumbstruck by the fact that he just saw a Bigfoot. Whatever that Bigfoot was had grabbed his head through the tent. And here I am, I've driven 6.5 hours to Montana to be like partly amused and partly like, I don't know, whatever. And I sit down late for this town hall thing, and the first person that stands up basically describes that the same thing that happened to me happened to him, but he was able to confirm what it was by getting up and shining a flashlight on it. So here I am, and I'm like, is this real? Is this real life? This is ridiculous. The first person to stand up and tell their story at this thing is describing what happened to me. Yeah, so I went there to kind of like disprove it and to be able to laugh about it and be like, this is all BS. And then in the end, I like walk away. I'm like, oh my god, is this happening? Is this my life? I'll be one of those guys that's seeing aliens or UFOs or ghosts or whatever, and now I'm like, I'm in that world. It feels like. So, anyways, so then after that, I was able to kind of come back down and then kind of begin reading into the biological reality of what we're describing here. And as it turns out, there's actually a fair bit of wealth around or a fair bit of information, a wealth of information, and a wealth of evidence, credible evidence towards a biological reality for this.